Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special interview focusing on Ecuador's upcoming presidential runoff election, set to take place in less than 2 weeks. It's actually scheduled for April the 13th, I believe. My name is Jesus Rodriguez. I'm Orinoco Tribune's editor, and I'm joined today by our co-editor, Sahili Chowdhury. In previous coverage, Orinoco Tribune has analyzed the deepening crisis in Ecuador since Rafael's Correa departure in 2014. The country now grapples with soaring crime rates, drug trafficking, electricity shortages, and economic collapse, all while far-right leaders both support from Washington and international financial institutions, yet face no sanctions or blockades. Remarkably, critics of Ecuador turmoil avoid attributing these failures to capitalism, unlike their eagerness to blame socialism for similar crises in Venezuela. Today, we delve into critical issues shaping the presidential race, the political balance of power in Ecuador National Assembly, especially after the first round of the elections a few weeks ago, the potential scenarios following a victory for the citizen revolution movement, and the likelihood of convening a constituent assembly to rewrite the constitution. We also will try to examine the risk of imperialist interference or last-minute destabilization efforts that might arise in the coming days, as sadly the recent history in Ecuador has shown us. And to discuss this, we are honored to be joined by Fidel Narváez, who will help us unpack, these complex issues. Fidel Narváez studied international relations at the University of Economics in Prague, a prestigious institution known for its focus on diplomacy and economics. During his career, he became a prominent human rights advocate, serving as both a leader of Ecuador's Permanent Assembly for Human Rights and the technical secretary of the Inter-American Platform for Human Rights, Democracy, and Development. Since 2007, he has resided in the United Kingdom with his British Ecuadorian family. Between 2010 and 2018, under President Rafael Correa's administration, Narváez held diplomatic role as Ecuador's consul in London. Notably, he played a critical role in securing political asylum for Julian Assange in 2012, after the WikiLeaks founders faced potential extraditions to the United States. During Assange's 7 years confinement in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, Narváez lived alongside him for 6 years, managing diplomatic tensions and logistical challenges arising from the high-profile case. So, welcome, Fidel. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you with us today to discuss these issues. And let's jump to the first question, which is, what are the real chances of victory for Luisa González this time? Especially taking into consideration that we sometimes in the left are too optimistic, and I believe that we should try to, be more balanced, pondering and making expectations, creating expectations, and because at least in the case of Ecuador, we have been crashing with reality too many times in recent years, especially, in the electoral field. Many times we have, having the expectation that we will, the left will regain control of the country, but that doesn't happen. So what is the fact now? Recently, there were several, polls released showing that Luisa González is winning in most of the polls out there in Ecuador. So tell us a little bit about that, please, and welcome again.
The pleasure is mine, and thank you for having me. We should be optimistic. If we want to win, we should remain optimistic. And the high expectations are well-founded. As you mentioned, the latest polls show a lead. It's an important lead, several points ahead. for the citizen revolution candidate to win the election. In my opinion, we have not been so close to win the election since we left power like 8 years ago. And I would say that the fact that we have lost the 2 previous elections with a small margin at the time is due to probably dirty tricks that have played an important role in the last days previous the election. We've seen that in 2021, when we lost with Andrés Arauz. In the last 2 weeks previous election, the general attorney certainly received the visit of the Colombian general attorney, general prosecutor, with allegations of some dodgy financing from the Colombian guerrillas to our candidate, which turned to be totally false, but that played a role in the result of the election. And in the most recent election, 2023, when Mr. Noboa unexpectedly won the election, they went even so far to kill a presidential candidate in order to influence the votes that were cast only 10 days after. All the polls show, previous to the assassination, that our candidate will win comfortably that election. We did win comfortably the first round, but for the second round, it was not the case. So in this occasion, I think the election being only a week after this interview, we are set up to finally come back to power.
That's nice. That's great, actually. Sahili have the next question. Go ahead, Sahili.
Okay, so, well, whoever wins, I mean, whoever wins the presidency, that person would need to have support from the National Assembly in order to be able to rule, because as far as I understand, all the laws, etc., have to be like anything that a president needs would need to be approved by the parliament. So in this situation, I mean, what is the expectation that if Luisa González wins the presidency, how easy or how difficult would she find getting the necessary support from the National Assembly, given that no party won the majority and that it seems to be a very fractured, very divided parliament this time, just like the last 2 times, I believe?
Well, yes, it's true that no party has the majority by itself, but certainly the citizen revolution remains the strongest party in Ecuador. Still, the strongest, the highest number of seats is with us. We do not have the majority by ourselves, but we could form an alliance. And in fact, just a few days ago, we have formalized an electoral alliance with the indigenous movement, which is the other left-wing political actor in Ecuador, and with whom we haven't managed to get an alliance in the previous elections. This time, they had the 3rd place in terms of the number of votes in the presidential elections, and they also have the 3rd biggest number of seats. Not that significant. I think they have something like 9 seats. We have 67 seats. Those 2 combined will mean that we have the half of the numbers needed. I mean, we have the numbers needed to have a simple majority. That will allow the government to pass many laws, not all that will need bigger majority, that's true, but I'm confident that the alliance that we are doing with the indigenous movement will allow governance for the first female president that is going to be elected in a few days' time.
That's great.
So I'll just ask, I mean, I'm small thing about this. So apart from the three parties that you mentioned, I believe there are, I mean, others with smaller number of seats, maybe 1 or 3 or something like this. Oh, so apart from the number of seats, in general, how are they supporting the candidates in the second round? For example, apart from Pachakutik, with which Ms. González was able to sign an agreement, like a support agreement or minimum common agenda, etc. But you have for example, Social Christian Party, which may be a very small one, but what sort of position do they have, these sort of parties have in regards to, their politics, their ideology, like who are they supporting, or other parties if there are others?
Let me add something to that, Fidel. Yes. I mean, I see here in our chart that we have that, for example, Social Christian Party have 4 members in the parliament, and the Patriotic Society Party has 1, and Popular Unity has 1 also. What are those parties? Who? I mean, what is their ideology? Do they tend to align with citizen revolution, or in the contrary?
The Social Christian Party is probably the only right-wing party that remain consistently ideologically. They have been in decline, heavily decline. That's a very few. I don't think previously they have so few seats in parliament. And on paper, they will align with the current government, with the right, yeah. But remains to be seen. Remains to be seen, because we have seen in previous parliaments how papers say something, but the real politics say something different. What we have seen for certain is that Ecuador has become a kind of a two-party race with the incumbents of this ADN, the party of the current president. So 2 big forces, and all the others are marginal, apart from the indigenous movement, perhaps the only one who could make difference. But we know for certain that they should not, and they will not go in alliance with the right-wing sector of the parliament. So I think it remains to be seen. Luisa González wants to put forward an agenda that's very inclusive. The country has been suffering from polarization, and I would say it's been suffering for political aggressiveness and political hate. And that's not good for anybody. That's not good for anybody. And I think she will put forward a very inclusive agenda. And as soon as the politicians see that we have an efficient, responsible government that finally is tackling the main problems affecting current Ecuador, I'm confident that she will get enough support to push forward a progressive agenda.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Let's hope that happens.
It's not going to be easy, but it can be done.
Yes, yes. And somehow that is connected with the next question that is related to the Constituent Assembly. And I made a in the issues that we designed that we want to talk with you. We put that particular issue because first, we have been dialoguing with friends in Ecuador in recent months, and we understand that many of them believe that a constituent assembly might be the only tool to untangle all the crazy things that has been done by Lenin Moreno, what is the other one?
Guillermo Lasso.
Guillermo Lasso, and now Novoa, and I mean, I'm talking about violations of constitutional rules, you know, violation. I mean, they have made a lot of violations of constitutional norms in Ecuador, and for that reason, many friends of us believe that Constituent Assembly is something needed. But when I saw the first statement by Isa, when you know, he gave his a few days after, like a couple of weeks ago, when he gave CONAE support to Luisa González. One of the key issues that was in that document that was released was that CONAE was asking Luisa González not to advance in a constituent assembly. And that, for me, might be a point of friction that might arise in the case of the probable, you know, victory of Luisa González. I look for the same issue in this most recent pact that was signed between Pachacútec and Luisa González a few days ago, and I didn't see it, and that's nice. But anyway, I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think about the Constituent Assembly necessity first, and then what do you think about you know, the possible friction that might arise in the case of a victory of Luisa González?
Well, a constituency assembly is a very bold step. It's the more radical one you can take in order to tackle structural problems. The citizen revolution, the success of the citizen revolution, I would say, was a result of a constituency assembly held in 2008, which produced a wonderful constitution. The Ecuadorian constitution is regarded as one of most progressive in the world, and a constitution that allows us to implement progressive policies that make Ecuadorian champion many issues, certainly in our region: reduction of poverty, reduction of inequality, and many other social achievements. Certainly, since the comeback of the neoliberal politics in Ecuador, the constitution has been very much violated and disrespected. But the problem is the politics. The problem is not the legislation, if you know what I mean. So we do have serious problems to tackle: the infiltration of the narco mafias in the state, the destruction of state institutions, the reform of the judicial system, things that need bold steps. That's true. But the Constituent Assembly does not guarantee you successful outcome. It could be a high risk as well. And we can, for example, refer to Chile's experience recently. they did try to change the constitution for a progressive one, and things went the other way. So to put our constitution again to test, when we know now that we do not have the political muscle to guarantee a strong majority in an eventual Constituent Assembly, I think, in my personal opinion, and I would agree with Mr. Leonidas Issa, we should not go that way. We should not go that way. And in fact, the recent alliance that was formalized a few days ago does include the compromise of not going that way. So it won't be the case that in the case of Luisa González becoming president, we will try to change the constitution or go for a Constituent Assembly. In fact, the one that wants to do a Constituent Assembly is the incumbent president, Daniel Noboa. He does want to go to a Constituent Assembly because they want to change the constitution created by the citizen revolution. He wants to pave the way in order to keep freely implementing more radical neoliberal policies. Yeah. So I think we won't see Constituency Assembly in the case of Luisa González winning the election.
Okay, that's interesting. Because in fact, in case of many elections around in Latin America, this remains one of the most contentious points, whether one needs a constituent assembly or not. And we actually analyzed Chile's experience of trying a constituent assembly thrice in the last few years and failing each time, both from the left and from the right. We even discussed what went right with Ecuador, Bolivia, Venezuela, but not with Chile. So, and if the constitution of Ecuador remains, intact, more or less intact, it has not been vitiated that much, then I believe that one can put one's confidence in that constitution and that it would allow an eventual presidency of Luisa González to govern and tackle the problems that you mentioned. And among the problems, I'm coming to one of the most serious ones, and which comes from the exterior. And in the case of all the world, it comes from the United States or from the US imperialism, especially given the situation currently in Ecuador with Daniel Noboa, the current president, signing or maybe opening up the Galapagos Islands and other places for establishing US military bases and giving impunity to foreign soldiers, it will mean US soldiers on Ecuadorian soil. And even your article, which we republished, mentioning the Noboa government signing an agreement with the worst, like the most infamous mercenary organization in the world, Blackwater, which changed its name to Academy, and I don't know what they call themselves now. And its head, Eric Prince. So, the right. I have been reading Ecuadorian media. Most of it is very right wing, if you may allow it. So, and they have been, trying to present this as a very good thing, that it will strengthen Ecuador's security and, it will give protection to the Ecuadorian people. And I think security remains one of the most, one of the greatest concerns of the Ecuadorians as they go to the polls. So we know that the right wing is, it is accustomed to weaponize security issues in any country in case of elections, especially when it sees that it is in the point of losing. So how do you see these risks, the US interventionism, mercenary intervention, etc., impacting the election? Like, is there any chance that they might derail the second round elections, away from in favor of Noboa or something? And if Luisa González wins, which is also, the these threats will not go away, right? So how do you see these things impacting in the short term, the election, as well as in the long term?
Let me add something to that, Fidel. Uh, Additionally to what Sahili mentioned, a few days ago, Novoa went to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump in an attempt to, for many, in an attempt to will, improve his ratings and whatever, public relations stunt or anything. But from what I read, that visit has backfired somehow even within the right-wing, media in Ecuador, claiming that Novoa was using public funding for a private visit to Trump in Mar-a-Lago. But anyway, I mean, it's basically that Sahili was talking about, the U.S. imperialist intervention over Ecuador during all these years, and how the U.S. might try to do something at the last minute, as you explained earlier, has been happening in recent elections in Ecuador. So that's basically it.
Well, I think the choice on this election is very, very clear. On one side, you have a neo-colonial mentality, a neo-colonial international policy coming from people who wish to have the U.S. favor. And the other one, which is sovereign, nationalistic in the good sense, that will only prioritize Ecuador interests. And I would say that even the imperialist United States, in fact, will respect more the ones who are coherent and want to show self-respect. In the end, I think this is backfiring to Mr. Daniel Noboa, who, by the way, he is a U.S. citizen. He was born in U.S. Because this outrageous proposal to bring either foreign troops, which is, by the way, against the Constitution, that's why he wants to change the Constitution, or to go for security constructors, which are in fact mercenaries of the worst fashion, is a desperate attempt to distract the focus on his total failure tackling the security problem in Ecuador, which is the main issue. So, in the case of Luisa González winning the election, I'm pretty confident that we will have, again, respectful relationships with all the countries, including the United States. The citizen revolution was 10 years in power with Rafael Correa. We did not sign a free trade agreement with the United States. We expelled an American ambassador. We protected Julian Assange. We end up the presence of the US military base. And you can keep having examples of sovereign international policy. And we were never had any real economical sanctions, blockades, or anything coming from the United States. We were having business as usual. Our main commercial partner. They were not happy with our policies, but I think in the end, as I said, they have to, even then, they have to respect governments that have self-respect for themselves. So we have experienced, obviously, the history of Latin America and the world of American international interventionism. So I think we will know how to manage it. I'm not that worried about that.
And what about a surprise, last minute surprise? Do you think that something might happen this time?
Well, so that's the point of the surprise. You don't know. you don't know. But yes, they are capable of everything. As I said, previous elections, they killed a presidential candidate, which is for Ecuador, that's something that did not happen ever before. In the desperation, I think they might have a card under the sleeve for the last days of the campaign. Let's see. But hopefully the Ecuadorian people by then will know by experience that all the other tricks sadly have worked on the short term, but in the end they showed to be fake excuses. Yeah.
That's good. You want to add something, Sahili?
No, I think we have covered everything. I'll just say, I mean, since the killing of that presidential candidate in the last election, the murders of mayors and political leaders has sort of become normalized. I mean, I will not say normalized by the people because they seem to be very worried about security, but it has become daily news or sort of every month you will hear either an attack on a political leader or even mayors have been killed. So we can understand that the security question remains the huge issue, and it will probably be the biggest issue that Luisa González would have to tackle if she becomes the president.
Well, yes, but we have made of Ecuador the second safest country in a very violent region, which is Latin America. We were once one of the safest countries with a wonderful constitution, with the same legislation that we will again, with social policies, basically, not with a hard hand that many people will wish to replicate as Mr. Bukele in El Salvador, openly violating human rights. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take some time because always building is a much harder and long-term process than destroying. So we have to rebuild our institutions and rebuild our security and our peace. But I'm confident that we will do it again. Yeah.
Thank you, Fidel. Thank you for accepting the invitation to the interview. And please let the audience know about you, where they can find your work, your thoughts. We recently published what Sahili mentioned, that piece that you wrote about the disagreement between Novoa and Eric Prince. But where do you write the most? Do you have social media accounts, anything? The book, are you writing a book or something?
I'm ashamed to say that I don't do social networks. I do not have personal accounts, but with the publication of my next book, I'm sure I will have to get a social account to promote my writing, and people can find me in Google and my articles or interviews just by writing my name on there.
When are you planning that? When are you planning that book to be published?
This year. I don't have dates yet, but this year my book should be published. Yeah.
That's nice. Thank you again, Fidel, and we wish you the best. Sahili, do you want to add something?
Oh, we wish you and Ecuador the best, and we'll be looking forward to your book when it comes out.
Yes,
Thank you.
and please, compas, subscribe to Orinoco Tribune, like the video, and please support our work, which is basically crowdfunded. So we need your support always. Un abrazo, and thank you, Fidel, again.